Welcome to Six Figure Souls Doing Good and Making Money, the weekly podcast where I highlight entrepreneurs who have left the grind and designed businesses in alignment with who they are. This is a very special season 9 where I'm interviewing my co-authors for the third collaborative book in the Ultimate Guide series, Leaving Your Legacy. I'm Camille Miller, your host, a business strategist and life accelerator. I'm also the founder of the Natural Life Business Partnership and the Soul Professional Society, which is a global business incubator for logically brained, soul-led micro entrepreneurs in service. Today, I have a very special co-author, John Jaramillo. He is a podcast host and a leadership performance coach. He is also a co-author from our second book. So we'll talk a little bit about that. John, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Camille, for having me.
You are so welcome. So I always like to start off with a little bit about you. So people listening know who you are, why you're here, what your background is. So tell us a little bit about what you do and your journey.
So the work that I've been doing is leadership performance, working anywhere from volunteering with students up to executives, higher level professionals. And mostly what I've been driven towards or what I've been pulled into is people that are new to their positions. So people that are hired into their positions, promoted into the positions where the person has the skills, they have all the tools that they need, except that bump of confidence, except that accountability, except that sounding board for just kind of a partnership to go into that role and deliver the best that they can. Aside from that, I'm always writing, contributing to books, blogging. I'm active on LinkedIn. And my journey, cutting to the straight of it, child of immigrants, first to go to college, had no idea what the hell I wanted to do. Introspective kid. So I'm like, all right, business to get away from the factory that my parents were working at, which I worked at too.
Okay.
That's what they wanted for me. So business, right? I had no idea. I love psychology. So I'm like, I'm marketing. That's a good mix of both of them. So it was like different jobs all throughout. I went back to school for master's in organizational psychology. And then between that and my MBA is when I launched my company, Coach It Out LLC, where I do the coaching, the leadership coaching. And then a few years ago, during the pandemic, I joined a board that was hosting online events, and I volunteered to host those events, interviewing branding specialists, marketing specialists. It was for the American Marketing Association
Ah,
Connecticut chapter.
okay.
So when that at the first night that we did that, people told me I did a good job. I felt comfortable. I had a great time just shooting it with whoever what the guest was and just kind of picking their brain. So after that was done, I wanted to pick that up again. So I launched my podcast, Book Leads Impactful Books for Life and Leadership. And in that series, I interview leaders from my network on books that have impacted their lives, that have influenced their work, that have just left an indelible mark on who they are, how they operate in their work life and business. All of that stuff is connected. It's all connected. So if I could get to that book, whether they wrote it or not, because the bulk of them have been authors, that was never my intention. But when an author hears that I'm here sharing about books and getting the word out there, obviously they're going to reach out. So I've had so many authors on, and it's evolving. No 2 years are the same. I'm kind of stepping away from coaching, only maintaining a few clients, doing more
Oh,
writing. My family's a little older. Well, the kids are 8, 5, and 2, so I want to spend more time with them. And I'm a night owl, so it just makes sense that I would do more writing as opposed to coaching. So
okay.
that's me in a so
I like that. Awesome. So let's jump in a little bit to your chapter. We'll talk a little bit about that.
yeah.
John's chapter is A Legacy Before Death: How Stories and Everyday Moments Can Inspire Us to Live Our Best Life Today. Absolutely love it. I know this book is so special. I first want to start with, you were also a co-author in our second book, which was talking more about how you reach that level of success. What made you decide to join this third book with Leaving Your Legacy?
Obviously the experience that I had with you all in working on the second book. I enjoyed that. I enjoy writing. And when you speak about legacy, like what
Mhm.
somebody can, the way we look at it, leave something behind, but I get into how you should, from this day forward, leave that legacy, build and design that legacy. When you get into anything that has to do with legacy work, impacting your community, making a difference, realizing who you are, not waiting for anybody else to get motivated, started, and put that ripple effect out there, I'm game. So again, based on the experience from the first book that I worked on with you, the second in your series, I just wanted to jump back in and have that experience again and just put that out there. And the great thing is about this, I know the theme of the books, what you're trying to get at. And it's interesting to go back into your experience and really refine why it is you think a certain way. So the chapter in your second book that I contributed, I always had a good idea what that meant to me. But it was when I signed up for your second book that I really sat down and went through it. And it was about my parents, their blue collar
Yep.
experience, and how I provide an experience for somebody else, just because they were always about service to others. So
Mhm.
that's what that book was about what do you create for others in this world of disconnection? How are you creating a great experience for others? And I'm like, I like to do that. I'm like, okay, so where did that come from? All right, I know it's my parents, but then it like forced me to go back, draw out examples. And I swear to God, the what you're reading in that chapter in the second book, those examples are ones that I only went back to parse out now. Obviously I lived them, but only through the course of that book and putting that chapter together did I realize like the weight of those experiences and what they did for me. So it's just all about legacy. I don't want to wait for something in the future, some kind of goal. So people like you, me, the authors in your books, we're just trying to make the impact that we can now. And you can sense that when you talk to certain people. So I again wanted to be a part of that.
Beautiful. I love that. I do the same every time I start a new book. I literally go back to the first one and I read everything I wrote, and then I do the second one, I read everything I wrote,
Yeah,
because I also see my own growth, because it hits differently because you write
absolutely.
it in the moment, right? Especially the first book I was reading about, starting a business that was called The Ultimate Guide to Creating a Soul Aligned Business. And it was really about how I created. And here I am in my 10th year, right? And I was writing about that first year.
Yeah.
And it's just wild. And then the second book was all about becoming a successful soul professional, right? So, what were those levels of success? What did I learn along the way? And now, when I go back, I'm like, oh, I've even leveled up since then.
Yeah,
Leaving
yeah,
your legacy is, yeah,
yeah. It's interesting going back and reading what you write, whether it's a blog post, whether it's a book, an anthology, whatever it might be. It's incredible to go back, read it, and that's still a foundation of who you are, but it's amazing what you can add to it.
yeah,
You could put it in a different tone. You would use different words just because every experience of every day, week, month after that last time, every day you're just a different person. Even if it's just that 1%, that compounding effect people talk about, you're just so different that again, the foundation is there, but the way you word it, the passion you have for it, as you go, what you already knew just gains more and more clarity that you can just put in a different way. So I think that experience is valuable to go back and see where you were because you learn from yourself. You learn how far you've come. And we are about achieving a goal. We are about moving forward, succeeding, whatever that means to you. And sometimes we don't realize how much we've done until we stop, really stop, look in the past, whether it's 1, 5, 10 years ago, and realize how far we've come. So that's incredible that you can leave that legacy in those writings because those are teaching
yeah.
moments that show you just how far you've come.
Yeah, that's nice. And I think it was important in this book we all pointed out um that we leave our legacy every day of our lives. We are always leaving our imprint on others. Whether good
Yeah,
or bad, we are doing it.
absolutely.
Yeah.
It's just a ripple effect. Um, you know, I think we've all, I know I've grown exponentially during the pandemic, and for all intents and purposes, we're out of that. But just to think of who I was at the start, seeing what's on the line for yourself, the uncertainty of the future, your society, People are coming forward with mental health issues. We're being more honest with each other. We don't want to
Mm-hmm.
sit back and wait. Because that was my attitude at the beginning is, I think I spoke about that towards the beginning of the pandemic, was treating each day like this is it, because we don't know where this thing is going to go, right? And when I'm talking
Right.
like 2020, we don't know where this is going to go. We don't know how far it's going to go. We don't know if we're ever going to see each other again. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
luckily, obviously, it didn't turn out that way, but I said to myself, when we come out of this, I want to try to go for whatever's on my mind, in my heart. I don't want to wait. I don't want to, hold my tongue. I don't want to overthink too much, which I already do anyway. But there's just so much out there that we can go after in the day to day, that we shouldn't hold on to that passion, that value that gives us our soul, what your business is all about. So when we get back to it in public and out and around each other, I want to contribute and leave that every day. And obviously, the way that there's tension in the world nowadays, is
Mm-hmm.
domestically, and then it's grown internationally. It's amazing, first and foremost, what you can do for someone just by addressing them, looking them in the eye, giving them a smile. It doesn't have to be huge. That's the thing about legacy. I mean, if you leave somebody with a great impression, they're going to remember the way you made them feel.
Yeah.
And it's, I think it was Maya Angelou who said that, and their words, and they may have been so said so many times they sound cliche, but it's magic when that happens. When you look at somebody, when you address them by their name with courtesy, with respect, helping them in any way you can. That's my biggest thing about legacy is you don't have to, it doesn't have to be seismic,
Yeah.
huge gravitas. It doesn't have to be any of that. It can be in the everyday little actions, that you can just kind of put out there, even with strangers. You can
Absolutely.
make somebody's day just by smiling at them, joking about the common environment that you're in. I mean, I try to do that all the time just because in the end, it makes me feel good because I think whatever's happening is funny, but it's just those little connections. So I think we can't take that for granted. So don't wait until you're gone and somebody's reading your eulogy for that to dictate what people know about you. Roll it out as you go, enjoy life. So there are so many pieces that you can consider when it comes to that.
Yeah. I think this book was more about making it intentional because we're doing it,
Yes.
right?
Yes.
So why not be
Yes.
intentional about what that plan looks like for us?
Absolutely. Because I think so many of us are going through, we're doing the right things.
Change. Yeah.
Yeah, we're doing the right things. Even kids going to college, they're trying to get into a career. They want to be happy in their lives. They want to contribute, for the most part. They're taking the steps in life. They're following the script, I guess. But, are you following it too much? Are you shining through who you really are? Are you being intentional? So you can have, and so many of my podcast episodes have been people, and I give examples in this chapter where, for all intents and purposes, they're successful by many people's measures, but there was
Hmm.
something missing, that something
Yep.
was calling them. So even though you may be doing great in life, I want you to stop and ask yourself, is this what I really want? Is this what I should be doing? Is there something that I'm leaving on the table because I'm not really sitting back and being strategic and tactical about it? You don't have to overthink it, but it's amazing how far you can get if you just ask a few simple questions of yourself.
Yeah. Or I always say, just does it make your heart sing?
Yeah.
Right.
Again,
When you wake up
I'm
every
not going to lie,
day.
that sounds hokey as hell, but when you have that feeling, that reward, that sensation inside you, like I did good, like I delivered for this person, I made this impact. Yeah, you really do feel like your heart is singing. You
Yeah.
feel like you're in tune with what you've done. And I think that's the best measure of, am I doing the right thing, is how does it make you feel? So
Yeah.
that's a great example and metaphor for how that does feel.
Yeah. Yeah. I loved how I'm going to dovetail this a little. Oops, sorry. I'm going to
No
dovetail
worries.
this a little bit with your own podcast, because one of the things I'm doing now, and you can appreciate it, and this is just talking about how we grow, right? How we grew from the second book to the third book, how we've grown since the pandemic. One of the things I'm doing right now is reading over I have a book problem. I love books, but I'm rereading.
Who
I'm
likes
actually
books?
listening to them. I'm listening to them
Okay.
because they hit me
Okay.
differently.
Thank you
Um,
for that transparency. That's fine. That's
yeah,
good.
no, I'm doing it on purpose. I do read too. Um,
Believe me, I get it.
but I'm doing it on purpose because I think differently
Mhm.
when I hear it. So
Absolutely.
I literally just set up like this whole reading thing of books that I've read a long time ago that I'm rereading because I'm curious if they hit me differently. And
Oh
I
yeah.
hear different things, right?
Oh yeah.
Even and actually the next 5 books I just set up are all spiritual books. I do business books and spiritual books, but
Yeah.
I don't know, I went through this thing and I'm like, I'm gonna reread. Like I just did The Big Leap by Gay Hendricks, and
Yep.
I'm doing How to Win Friends and Influence People. Just did Think and Grow
Yeah.
Rich.
Yep.
Just did now I'm doing Untethered Soul in his
Okay.
second one right
That's what
now.
I need to get around to. I've heard so many people mention that book. But
Yeah,
it's funny you say that because there's
yeah,
been instances where in my podcast somebody shares a book with me either that I haven't read or that we've both read or I have like the authors on. But there were a few instances where I have the book. They said I want to do this book. I'm like, all right, great, I have it. In preparation for that conversation, just a few kind of points. I go back and I look at all my notes, my little marks in the
I
book,
do that too.
and I skim through the book. Full transparency, I don't reread the book every time, but I skim it and I look at the chapter titles, the section headers. I think I look at what I underlined, what I starred, what I
Yeah,
highlighted, what I circled. And what's incredible is as I'm reading through the book, parts here, parts there, like chapters that stand out, the parts that I was crazy about and circled and underlined aren't the parts that are important to me now. Now there were different areas that I would have
yeah, because they're
circled
different.
and that stand out because exactly what you said. You're
Yeah,
reading it this was like 15 years after I read it the first time, but you're reading it, you're a different person.
yeah,
We're different people from day to day. Now imagine year to year to year. Like I said, I'm a completely different person now than I was pre-pandemic. So that resonated when you said that, when you read something and it just hits you so different because your
differently.
priorities, your loves, your passions, your
Yeah,
experiences, they're all so different now.
yeah. Think and Grow Rich. I think this was my fifth or sixth time. And I actually, every time I do that with a book, if it's a physical book, I outline in a different color and I put the date there. In the
Yeah.
front margin, I do the color and the date. So I
Oh yeah.
know when I did different things.
That's
And
funny.
I have so many books. My newest one that I love, I'm sure you've read this one, is 10x is easier than 2x. I've,
No, I've heard of it though.
oh my God, this is literally my favorite book. Um, and and it was Rich Dad Poor Dad for like decades. Right?
Yeah.
But this is my new one where I listened to it on Audible. So I don't know, someone must have mentioned it in a podcast, something like that. And I'm like, oh, let me buy this one. And it was so good. I was like, okay, I have to buy it. And then I went through and outlined the whole thing. So I've done it 2 times already. And I will listen to it again at the end of the summer. And then I'm going to do a book club on it.
Yeah. Oh, that's great. I'd love to
Yeah,
join that.
I'm doing a book club on it because I think it is transformational. But every time I go through it, I hear different things. And it's wild to me.
Yeah, I think there's a certain podcast you should go on to talk about that book.
Oh, okay. I will do that because I'm
So consider
obsessed with
that an
this book.
invitation.
Yes,
Yeah.
I will be happy to do
Um,
that. And they did a couple other ones
yeah,
for like The Gap and the Gain, and there's another
there's
one.
just so
But
many to get to. There's so
I
many to get
literally
to. I
keep a
see,
running list.
yeah, there's so many to get to that sometimes I'm just like, all right, I just need a break for like a month or two, and the
Yeah,
list just keeps growing. Um, yeah, but that it's interesting what you were saying about the Audible versus the hard copy. And the only reason I haven't done listening to books is because I like to highlight, I like to mark up. But that's good what you said. Like
I
you
go,
listen to it first and then
yeah,
go look forward and read it. That's the only reason I haven't done it, is just because I'm
yeah,
if there's a good quote, if there's a good list, if there's certain words that the author uses, someone like I said before, somebody had asked, how can you read so many leadership books? And some of them they're usually not in the same topic. There's so many different parts to leadership. But what I always say is, listen, you can have 10 people write a book on the exact same topic, and two of them may hit you hard, and the other ones just don't make any sense.
yeah,
because the other ones you've already felt it that way. You've already experienced it that way. But maybe there's two where they use unique words, unique tones, they ask you unique questions. So anytime I'm reading is just something about the wording. So I'm so addicted to just in pencil, underlining, circling,
Yeah.
this is a list. Here's a study. Here's some research that they mentioned. So, but I'll have to try that soon, the
I,
Audible thing.
I do that with my magazines too. And that's why I can't do Kindle. Like that's what doesn't work. Kindle does not work for me at all because I like to feel and underline and know and
Mm,
write things in the margin. But people always ask me, this is with all your leadership books. People always ask me, like, even when I'm on the beach or I'm on vacation, I read about business and success,
mm,
right? And it's actually because I love it. Like
yeah,
I love how other people have thought things through. Doesn't mean I'll adopt it, right? But I
yeah.
I read constantly. I read all of the Inc. magazines because they're all entrepreneurs, right? So
Mm.
especially entrepreneurial stuff all the time. I read
Yeah,
constantly, constantly.
I'm a big Harvard Business Review nerd.
Ah,
I've been reading that for decades. But yeah, I get it. It's interesting. I'm thinking like, okay, what other genres of books can I read that will keep my attention? A lot of my stuff is self-help, business, life stuff.
that's all
Um,
mine is. Like,
and people are like, isn't that overkill? I'm like I said, people just view things differently. That one author that writes a book about something just puts it in such a way that just rings and you look at it differently. So I think it's just worth it.
yeah, yeah. It's
And
there,
a lot of those books are about people that are trying to make a difference, or they're studying themselves, or they've done research. So they're just curious as hell, the way I am, about how things work and what my role is in that. So
yeah. So like you, I feel like you never know when you're going to hear that nugget and it's just going to
yeah,
hit me
yeah,
differently. And
yeah.
I do take, if I'm listening to Audible, I do stop it and write something down.
Okay.
Like I was actually just listening to a book, and here's my little sticky pad to write it. It says, business is part of a spiritual path,
That's
right?
your alley right there.
And
That's
I
right
was
up your
like,
alley.
oh my
Yeah.
gosh.
Yeah.
I stopped
That's
it. I was like,
right
let me
up your
write that
alley.
down. Yeah.
Yeah, it's true.
So it
And
does
I think
happen.
that's what it's moving towards, especially after the pandemic, where it's not my discovery. It's just everybody's seen it. Like, the whole quiet quitting. Where are your priorities? If you have this, we didn't know what was going to happen, but when the world is shut down, you're going to question what you do and why you do it. So
Yeah. And who's
I think
important
we're
to you?
moving exactly. I think we're moving towards what you're sharing right now. It's not just about the 9 to 5, the check, the accolades, this and that. Aside from meeting your targets, your goals, revenue, profit, all that stuff, what kind of difference are you making in the world? Because I've been in positions of making great money, and it's just kind of like, you're just kind of going through the
Yep.
motions. And a lot of my guests have been like that. Again, like I mentioned, they've had those successes, but it's like, it doesn't really sink. It doesn't really feel right. Doesn't make your heart sing. So I think these books that you've put out, especially this last one, are kind of nudging people. Okay, be intentional, be proactive. What is it you want? You can be going through the motions and paying your bills, and you still have your house and your clothes, and your kids are safe, and all that great neighborhood and whatnot. Is that what, at the end of your life, is that what you want, or do you want to start being intentional every day, every moment? Not burn out on it, but question how much do you really need and how much are you getting or not, that's going
Yeah.
to make you happy and fulfilled.
Yeah. Absolutely. Um, Anything in this book, or I would say in writing this last chapter, did you have any aha moments or things are like, huh, I gotta do a little more of that?
um I think in the podcast overall, just listening to people's stories, and there's 5 sections in this chapter.
Okay,
Just quick blurbs of the title. Like, one is the nagging voice that you have in your head.
awesome.
The second one is time to break the chains of trauma.
Mm.
Section 3 is it's on me to show what I'm capable of.
Ooh, I like
Four is
that.
The Power of Faith in Serving Others, and the fifth one is Why Wait to Be Happy. So I mean, I went thinking through my podcast series and came up with titles of sections, and I'm like, okay, what are some common themes that I see?
Mhm.
These are the strongest ones, but some of the ones that resonated the most with me were the ones that had any kind of childhood trauma.
Yeah.
So trauma is relative. It can range from low to high, whatever the wording is. I don't want to offend anybody. I didn't have any crazy trauma, but there were certain things that still stick around from childhood. And in discussing these stories with these guests, I realized certain things I do today, certain quirks I have, personality quirks, where they stem from. So it was in writing this that I
Ah,
went through the themes where it's like, yeah, so and so told me about this, so and so told me about that. And I took different pieces from, again, whoever's speaking to you, writing to you, whatever it may be, certain speakers, certain guests, there was just a certain word or a certain sentence that hit me. So even though they
yeah.
were talking about similar themes, their experience was that just that unique. So when I got to that section writing it, although it's not long, it got me thinking a lot about it. So I've with every episode that I sit down, it's no exaggeration. I always stand up a different person because they've shown me certain ways of looking at it, certain ways of seeing you're not alone, certain ways of seeing how much of a difference you can make because they had the traumas,
Mm,
but now they're serving people because they want to be what they didn't have when they were younger. So it was just very powerful stuff. It's just
yeah.
amazing. I'm so lucky, very lucky.
Yeah. Your chapter was inspiring, and I loved that you, one, broke it down into sections, and two, then referenced who your guests were. So if people want to go back
Yeah.
and listen to those podcasts, you can hear a fuller version of what
Yeah.
moved you.
Yeah, I love that I could put that in there and just share. And if perfectly like you said,
Love
if they
that.
want to go back and take a listen
Yep.
and it's a an
Go
ode to
deeper.
these guests because I learned, where in the beginning it was like, okay, let me get a podcast, get my face out there, be a thought leader, yada yada yada. But when I really sat down and started doing the work of the conversation and designing these conversations with my partners, right? There's just this
Yep.
alchemy that goes back and
Yep.
forth. For me, they're not interviews, they're conversations. We're going back and forth. So
Yeah.
they're my teachers. I mean, I call this series my master class in humanity. They just showed me different things that I'd never thought that I would be privy to, that I would experience. And most of these people I haven't even met in person. I haven't even met you in person.
That's
You were
true.
one of my guests. So but even though you have it, we're lucky to be living in this time with this technology that allows us to reach out to somebody and say, hey, I need help with this, or can I talk to you? Can I pick your brain? And every little conversation I had is that person's legacy in play with me. And
Yeah.
what I learned from them, I use with others. And that's my legacy built on theirs with others. So it's always in play. But like you said, I want people to be intentional and see the impact that they can have in the world because I think so many of us can have these moments where we feel aimless, like we don't know what our purpose is. And we underestimate that the difference comes from inside. I think so
Mm,
many of us spend our lives and careers looking to the outside to validate us, well, I've seen it with my clients when they feel the most fulfilled is when they've taken the tools from the environment, but to express who they really are and share their values out there. So there's
absolutely.
just so many lessons in these conversations and your series, my series, these books. It's just, I love the fact that you're going to have that book club on that book because again, it's one book, but whoever's in that book club can bring their
Right.
different perspective to it.
Absolutely.
You said you listened to it, like read it twice and you want to go back to or something like that.
Yeah.
I guarantee when you have that book club, there's going to be somebody in there that's read it. They're going to say something, and you're going to be like, holy shit, I've never thought about it that way.
Yep.
And you've gone through the book plenty of times. So there's so much value in just hearing each other's stories. And that's where
Absolutely.
this all comes from, what we do.
Yeah, absolutely. I love the interactive piece of it in everything I do when I try to figure out, what is it that makes my heart sing? Right. I'm
Mm.
constantly tweaking things, but books does. And I had a book club years ago and
Yeah.
it just kind of, I just didn't have the time. And I just did Think and Grow Rich. And I
No,
think that was like
I'm due for
16
one.
weeks. Yeah.
I'm due for one. I'd like to join one. So as soon as you do, I'm game.
All right. Awesome. John, thank you so much for your time. If people want to get in touch with you or learn more about you, where's the best way to do that?
Just use my name at the bottom of the screen, John M. Jaramillo. Plug that into LinkedIn, and that has all my podcasts, newsletters, website. It has all the information. That's the best way to get in touch with me. That's where I'm most active.
Awesome. And John's bio and his links will be in these show notes, but just in case you're driving, that's why we ask him to say it in case you want to Google it really fast. Thank
I
you so much.
appreciate it.
Thank you so much, John, for being on the podcast today and being one of my co-authors in the second book now.
I appreciate the invitations across the board. It was amazing.
You're welcome. Thank you, listeners, for joining me today. If you loved this interview, please share it with your friends and pick up the book due out September of 2024. You can also join others by checking out soulprofessional.com. If you are a soul professional, you live in a higher vibration, have an alternative approach to business, and are here to help repair the world. Come network with us, and you can learn more at soulprofessional.com. Good night, everybody.